بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We begin in today's class a new chapter, one of the pillars of Islam, and that is the pillar of fasting the month of Ramadan. And linguistically, fasting means to refrain. So when the mother of Maryam vowed that what was in her belly to be a servant of Allah Azza wa Jal, not knowing that it was a female. And when Maryam herself vowed not to speak a soul, she described this as إني نذرت للرحمن صوما فلن أكلم اليوم إنسيا. I have vowed to refrain from speaking. That is, I vowed to fast from speaking. So linguistically, fasting is to refrain. Technically, as you will find in your textbook, it is to refrain, to abstain from everything that nullifies your fasting. And we will come to discuss this later on, inshallah. So these things that nullify fasting, such as eating, drinking, whatever takes the ruling of eating and drinking, like IV fluids, glucose, ejaculation, intercourse, menstruation, postnatal bleeding, and so on, to abstain and refrain from these things. Okay. And the timing is also essential. That is, from the break of dawn until the sun sets. Okay, I've done that. And there is an important also addition that is not mentioned in your textbook. You should add it. And that is with the intention of worshiping Allah. And the book will talk about this point later on, being a pillar of fasting. Because I can abstain from eating and drinking from the break of dawn till sunset, but with the intention of only going for a diet. Would that count? The answer is no. It has to be with the intention of worshiping Allah. Likewise, a prisoner, someone who was stranded on an island. So by default, he abstained from eating and drinking simply because there is no food nor drink. And it was from the break of dawn till sunset. Would he be considered fasting? The answer is no, because his intention was not included, and hence Allah does not accept such a ibadah, such a worship, without an intention. Then we have the spiritual concept of fasting, and there are 8 points. You can read those on your spare time. Number 6, at the very end, it says that there's a hadith: Satan has his way with a human being like his own blood, restrict his path by hunger. The phrase restrict his path by hunger is not authentic, so you should scratch that out. So read these 8 points on your own time to get the benefits out of it. What are the conditions for fasting? Now, there are a number of conditions. Number one, being a Muslim. And this is a condition in Allah accepting your deeds. So Allah Azza wa Jal does not accept the deeds except of those who are Muslim, who are submitting their will to Allah Azza wa Jal. And this is why Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Furqan, وَقَدِمْنَا إِلَى مَا عَمِلُوا مِنْ عَمَلٍ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ هَبَاءً مَنْثُورًا, that all what the non-Muslims have done in this world, we shall make it, or we shall turn it into dust on the day of judgment, meaning Allah does not accept this. So non-Muslims, if they offer good deeds, they build orphanages, they feed the hungry, they honor their words and commitments, they do a lot of good things, no doubt about that. But because they do not believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, they did not submit their will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah does not accept these deeds. Yes, Allah feeds them in this world, Allah offers to them provision, gives them health, gives them what they want. So what Allah has compensated them with in this life is more than what they had provided and offered of good deeds and worship and forms of worship, so that on the day of judgment they come and they have nothing to show up for. Number two, puberty. And fasting is not obligatory upon those who did not attain the age of puberty, but it is definitely something that they are encouraged to do. And this is why the youngsters are instructed, are recommended to try their level best, that they train early age, as the companions used to do. The companions used to order the children to fast until it was dhuhr time. This is when they feel the pinch of hunger most. So they start to cry. So their parents give them toys made of wool, dummies and dolls to play with. Not dummies, dolls to play with. Number three, sanity, which means that a person who's mentally ill, a person who's classified as insane, even if he fasts, this does not count. And in so many times or cases, a mentally ill person may not eat or drink from sunset, from sunrise, from the break of dawn till sunset. This so happens. That doesn't mean that a fasting day is counted, because the Prophet told us ﷺ that the pen has been uplifted except from three categories of people: a child until he reaches the age of puberty, a person who's asleep until he wakes up, and a person who's insane until he regains his sanity. Number four, a condition that does not impact the validity of the fasting, but those who do not have it are exempted from fasting, and that is to be in sound health. In the verses talking about fasting, and there are two of them, Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah says, فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. And another verse, فَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. So here we find that the condition of obligation upon a person to fast is that he would be in a sound state of health, because the opposite of that is being sick, being marid. And sickness is relative. So I have a cut in my finger. I'm considered to be not in my sound state of health, but this is not a legitimate reason to skip fasting. Someone who has knee problems and he cannot pray standing up doesn't mean he's exempted from fasting. So the type of sickness that would exempt you from fasting is the type that would hinder your fasting, hinder your recovery, or harm you. In this case, you have to skip fasting to avoid all of this, as you have the concession, the permission from Allah Azza wa Jal to skip it. Now, having said that you skip it, definitely you're going to need to make them up, because Allah stated فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ, that you have to make them up later on other days, providing that your illness is curable. So someone who has a very bad stomach ache or a headache that prevents him, that stops him from fasting, he can skip fasting. But once he is recovered, he has to make up for these days. And if a person's illness is chronic, so a person has kidney failure, doctors say you won't be able to fast anymore. He's always on dialysis. He has a problem with diabetes, the type that if he does not eat something every couple of hours, he may fall sick and die. And doctors say you have to eat something every couple of hours. This is chronic. You will never recover. He can skip and feed one poor person for every day he misses. Number 5, being in one's place or of residence. And number 6, women who are in the period or having postnatal bleeding, not discharge. These are usually labeled by jurors as obstacles. Free from obstacles. So part of the conditions of obligation of fasting upon each and every one of us is that he's free from obstacles. What obstacles? When a woman gets her menses or postnatal bleeding, consensus of scholars say that she cannot fast. Now, this consensus is agreed upon, but is it something that she can control? This is an obstacle. So this obstacle, due to its occurrence, she's exempted from fasting. Likewise, traveling. When a person travels, this is an obstacle that prevents a normal person from fasting. And this is dependent on the hardship, but even if it's a 10-minute flight or half an hour flight from point A to point B, which is considered to be a traveling distance within the community, in this case, one is exempted from fasting. If he fasts and there's no hardship on him, that's even great, and it's better. But we do not obligate him to do so, as he has the concession, he has the permission to skip it. And postnatal bleeding, alongside with monthly cycle, these are two excuses that the Sunnah came up to pardon a woman who has it from fasting. This is not mentioned in the Quran. So those who are misguided and only worship Allah Azza wa Jal through the Quran, as they claim, which they're not doing, they would probably deny this and obligate a woman to fast and pray even if she has her monthly cycle or postnatal bleeding. Of course, the women who are excused from fasting due to their postmortem bleeding or their monthly cycle, they are obliged to make up these missed days. A woman came to Aisha, and the hadith is in the Sahih. She said, why do women make up for the missed days they did not fast due to their monthly cycle, while they do not make up for the prayers they missed for the same reason? So Aisha was outraged, may Allah be pleased with her, our mother. And she said, are you from Harura, which is the hometown of the Khawarij? The Khawarij are the likes of people who have weird ideas depending on their intellect and logic rather than on the Quran and the Sunnah. And we have so many of those. We have so many people that whenever you speak to them, they will say, but logically this or that. What logic? We have the Quran and the Sunnah. So I looked into the Quran and Sunnah, I did not find it. And logically, blah, blah, blah. Akhi, you don't even know Arabic. And you want to claim that you know the Quran and the Sunnah? And at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, you said, what the heck? Let me continue fasting. This is valid. This would count, and this is accepted, inshaAllah Azza wa Jal. So, where else are we in? So these are the essentials. Now, the status. Of course, fasting is one of the pillars of Islam. Allah Azza wa Jal mandated it in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, Hadith Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, where the Prophet said, alayhi salam, that Islam was or has been built on 5 pillars, and fasting of Ramadan is one of them. And the hadith where a nomad came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him, what are the things that are mandatory upon me? And the Prophet said ﷺ, to fast the month of Ramadan. And the man said, anything else? And the Prophet said, no, unless you want to volunteer. And he said, by Allah, I will not add or subtract any of what you had said. And he left. And the Prophet said ﷺ, that he is successful if he told the truth by abiding by the things that I had directed him to. And as stated, it's mentioned in the Quran, the obligation in the authentic Sunnah, and the consensus of all scholars of Islam. There's no difference among them, which means that anyone who rejects, anyone who does not believe in the obligation of fasting the month of Ramadan or doubts it, he's an apostate. And there are so many people who are like this nowadays, unfortunately. And these are enemies of Islam, without any doubt. So don't be delusional. Someone who comes and attack your Quran or interpret it in a way that is un-Islamic at all, where are you coming from? Or starts to cast doubts about the Sunnah. These people are not truth seekers. They're not known to be practicing Muslims. These are plain hypocrites trying to undermine Islam. The Prophet ﷺ suffered immensely from them when he was in Medina. They plotted against Islam and the Muslims. They tried their level best to annihilate Islam. and failed miserably with the grace of Allah. And that's what's happening to them nowadays. But the problem is that Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَفِيكُمْ سَمَّاعُونَ لَهُمْ. There are among you, O Muslims, who pay attention to what they say. And this is a serious offense, because this illustrates how weak your iman is. When we hear news coming from Europe that they held a Friday congregation led by a woman, and it was mixed. So the worshippers, the followers, were men and women behind that imam lady who gave the khutbah and then prayed 2 rak'ahs of Jum'ah. What is this? This is not Islam. This is a new religion. But to publish articles about it and to highlight it and to cast doubts among the Muslims as if this is something modern and something that is hip and people should follow it, this is a great offense to Islam. It should be taken seriously. And these people should not be treated as normal Muslims, your everyday scholar who is making an ijtihad. No, this is something that goes against the consensus of all scholars of Islam. If these women think they're better than Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, or Hafsa, if they think they're more knowledgeable, we have a problem, a serious problem. And the funny thing is that the men praying behind them, if they're really men and not transgenders or something else, this is an issue that people should open their eyes to and really be careful